Everybody keeps asking me the same questions. When are you having children? What kind of a man are you? Maybe you married the wrong woman. I can't breathe anymore, Joan. I'm tired of pretending everything is okay. I'm tired of smiling when people mock my marriage. I'm tired.
People often think marriages end because love disappears.
I know.
Sometimes
it's okay.
That's true.
I'm tired.
But sometimes love is still there.
I'm afraid that
The laughter is still there. The promises are still there. What disappears is peace.
And you still
It doesn't happen overnight. It begins with one
Any
question.
good news yet?
Then
It's been 2
another.
years already.
Soon,
can see.
relatives begin chosen sides.
Mama
Friends
says
stop
she is
calling.
sleeping.
Secrets
Those are
become
not ordinary
gossip.
girls.
Silence becomes
I don't know the
louder
kind
than
of family my
arguments.
son married into.
And before two people realize what's happening, the problem they were supposed to fight together finally turns them against each other. This is the story of Joan and Lawrence, a couple who loved each other deeply until life tested their marriage in ways they never imagined.
If you're new here, welcome. On this channel, we share powerful stories inspired by real-life experiences. Stories that remind us that every struggle carries a lesson. Please subscribe. Now, let's begin.
The day Lawrence married Joan, people couldn't stop talking about them. Not because the wedding was extravagant, it wasn't. Not because Lawrence was wealthy, he wasn't. People admired them because of the way they looked at each other. It was the kind of love that didn't need many words. When Joan laughed, Lawrence smiled before anyone else. When Lawrence spoke, Joan listened as though no one else existed. Even the elderly women at the ceremony nodded approvingly.
They will grow old together.
One of them whispered, "If only life were that simple." Their first year of marriage was everything they had prayed for. They rented a modest apartment, cooked together, argued over whose turn it was to wash dishes, laughed over burnt meals, dreamed about buying a house someday. Some nights, they sat outside with cups of tea talking about names they would give their future children.
A girl first.
No, a boy.
Why?
So he would protect his younger sisters.
What if God gives us only girls?
Then I will become their bodyguard.
Joan laughed until tears filled her eyes. It was in moments like these that she silently thanked God. She hadn't married a perfect man, she had married a kind one, and sometimes kindness is far more valuable. Neither of them knew those innocent conversations would soon become painful memories. Life had already begun writing a different chapter. The first question came during a family gathering. Lawrence's mother smiled as she served food. Then she asked casually,
So when will I carry my grandchild?
We are trusting God's timing.
Oh, of course.
As they drove home that evening, neither she nor Lawrence said much. One question, that was all it took to steal the joy from an otherwise beautiful day. Weeks turned into months, another family gathering, another church service, another wedding, another neighbor, another friend, then another question.
Any good news yet?
So how many children now?
It's been 2 years already.
Yeah.
The words were never shouted, they were spoken with smiles, sometimes with laughter, sometimes with fake concern. But each one landed like a tiny stone. Individually, they seemed harmless. Together, they became a mountain. Lawrence noticed the change before Joan admitted it. She no longer lingered after church to greet people. She avoided conversations that always seemed to end the same way. One evening, while preparing dinner, Lawrence found her standing silently by the kitchen window. The vegetables lay untouched.
Joan?
I'm fine.
Lawrence knew she wasn't, but he also knew she wasn't ready to talk. So instead of asking questions, he quietly walked over, picked up the knife, and began chopping the vegetables beside her. Sometimes love doesn't speak. Sometimes love simply stays. But neither of them realized that the quiet storm was only beginning, because within weeks, a hospital visit would reveal a truth that would change everything. The hospital waiting room was unusually quiet. Lawrence sat beside Joan. Neither of them spoke. Sometimes silence says more than words ever would. Finally, the doctor's door opened.
Mr. and Mrs. Lawrence.
The couple stood together and walked inside. The doctor adjusted his glasses before speaking.
We've gone through all the test results. There is a growth in your uterus.
What kind of growth?
A uterine fibroid.
The room fell silent. The doctor continued carefully.
The fibroid has grown large enough to affect your fertility. It has also blocked one of your fallopian tubes. That's why conception has been difficult.
Joan stared blankly at the doctor's desk. His lips kept moving, but she wasn't hearing anything anymore. One sentence echoed inside her mind.
That's why conception has been difficult. I'm the reason.
No, we are not looking for who to blame.
The doctor smiled gently.
That's exactly the attitude you will need. This condition is treatable. It won't be easy, but there's hope.
Hope. It was the one word they carried home that afternoon. They decided something before entering their apartment. No one would know. Not yet. Not until they had a plan. Not until they had saved enough money for surgery. Not until they were emotionally ready. Some battles were never meant to become public entertainment. If only life respected boundaries. At first, Lawrence's mother seemed supportive. She would visit every weekend carrying fruits and soup.
My daughter, you look slimmer. Are you eating well?
Yes, Mama.
Everything sounded normal until the little comments began.
No pregnancy yet. Still flat. God's time is the best. But God's time also needs people to pray harder.
Joan's smile faded. Another week, another visit. The mother leaned closer.
You know, I married into this family when I was 23. By my second year, Lawrence was already running around the house.
Then added quietly,
Every tree should produce fruits.
Joan forced another smile. But inside, something broke. She no longer looked forward to weekends. The painful part wasn't that the words were loud. It was that they were wrapped in kindness. Those are often the hardest ones to explain. Weeks passed. Joan slowly became someone she barely recognized. She stopped taking pictures. She stopped wearing the bright colors she once loved. Even her laughter became shorter. One evening, Lawrence returned from work earlier than usual. The apartment was unusually quiet.
Joan?
No answer. He walked towards the bedroom. The door was slightly open. Inside, Joan stood before the mirror. She didn't know he was there. She placed both hands gently on her stomach.
I'm sorry. I don't know why my body is failing me.
But we'll get through this. I won't give up.
Lawrence couldn't hold back anymore. He stepped inside and wrapped his arms around her from behind. For several moments, neither of them spoke. Then Joan finally whispered,
I'm afraid.
So am I.
You are?
I'm afraid of losing your smile. I'm afraid of watching you blame yourself. I'm afraid that one day you will forget how much I love you.
Joan burst into tears. That night, neither of them talked about babies. Neither of them talked about hospitals. Neither of them talked about surgery. Instead, they simply held each other. Sometimes, love isn't found in finding answers. Sometimes, love is found in refusing to let go while searching for them. But outside their little apartment, the pressure was growing louder, and soon It wouldn't just come from family, it would come from the people they trusted most. What neither of them knew was that the next betrayal would not come from an enemy. It would come from someone Lawrence had trusted since childhood. The months that followed were some of the hardest Joan and Lawrence had ever known. The surgery wasn't free. The medications weren't cheap. Every month, they carefully set aside part of Lawrence's salary, telling themselves that each small sacrifice brought them one step closer to their dream. No vacations, no unnecessary shoppings, no eating out. Every coin had a purpose. But while they were quietly preparing for their future, the world around them refused to stay quiet. One Saturday afternoon, Lawrence attended the wedding of an old university friend. The atmosphere was lively. Music filled the hall. Old friends laughed as though no time had passed. For a moment, Lawrence forgot about hospital bills, doctor appointments, and the invisible weight he carried every day. Until one of his friends walked across with a broad smile.
Lawrence!
Another friend joined them, then another. The conversation flowed naturally. Work, life, football, old memories. And then someone asked the question Lawrence had begun to hate.
So how many children now? We're trusting God.
Still trusting after 2 years?
Brother.
No offense, but marriage without children is hard to call complete. Maybe you are being too soft. When a tree refuses to bear fruits...
He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't have to. The silence completed it. Lawrence felt something tighten inside his chest. He smiled, excused himself, and walked away. But those words followed him all the way home. Sometimes, the deepest wounds aren't caused by enemies. They are caused by people who think they are helping. Joan was setting the table when Lawrence walked in. She smiled.
You're home.
No answer. She noticed the tension in his face.
You look tired.
Still no answer. She served his food. He took one bite, then pushed the plate away.
I'm not hungry.
What happened?
Lawrence stood abruptly.
What happened? Everybody keeps asking me the same questions. When are you having children? What kind of a man are you? Maybe you married the wrong woman. I can't breathe anymore, Joan. I'm tired of pretending everything is okay. I'm tired of smiling when people mock my marriage. I'm tired.
Joan slowly lowered her eyes. A tear rolled down her cheek.
No, it's okay.
She wasn't crying because he had shouted. She was crying because for the first time, she felt like she was no longer fighting beside him. She was fighting in front of him. Lawrence looked at her trembling shoulders. Immediately, regret washed over him. But the damage had already been done. That night, they slept on the same bed, yet it felt as though an ocean separated them. The following evening, Lawrence found Joan sitting alone on the balcony. The setting sun painted the sky in soft shades of orange. Neither of them spoke for several minutes. Finally, Joan broke the silence.
I know you are hurting. I don't know how to help you anymore.
You don't have to.
If you can't talk to me, please talk to someone. You've been carrying too much alone. I don't want the weight to destroy you.
I've always believed that whatever happens in a marriage should stay in the marriage.
I know, but pain grows in silence. You need someone you trust.
There's one person, my childhood friend, David. He has known me all my life.
Then talk to him.
She had no idea that those simple words were about to invite a storm into their home. A few days later, Lawrence met David at a quiet roadside cafe. After exchanged greetings, the conversation turned serious.
I've been hiding something. What is it?
He explained everything. The hospital visits, the diagnosis, the surgery they were saving for, the fear, the pressure, the tears he had hidden from everyone. David listened without interrupting. When Lawrence finally finished, David reached across the table and squeezed his shoulder.
You should have told me earlier. We'll get through this.
For the first time in months, Lawrence felt lighter. He went home believing his burden had become smaller. But some people know how to keep confidence, others don't. That evening, David visited Lawrence's mother. In what he believed was an innocent conversation, he mentioned Lawrence's trouble.
What? The problem is with Joan.
David immediately realized his mistake, but it was too late. Worse, once released can never be called back. The next morning, Lawrence's mother arrived at their doorstep without warning. And this time, she wasn't carrying fruits. She was carrying accusations. The knock came just after breakfast. Joan opened the door. Standing outside was Lawrence's mother. She wasn't smiling. Without waiting to be invited in, she walked straight into the living room. Lawrence looked up from his laptop.
Mama, we weren't expecting you.
I know.
She sat down, folded her arms.
I finally heard the truth.
Mama!
So all this time, both of you have been hiding it from me.
We weren't hiding it. We were still trying to process everything.
Process. Your wife can't give you a child and you are processing?
Mama, enough!
No, Lawrence. For 2 years, almost 3, people have been asking me where my grandchildren are. Now I know why. So tell me the truth. How long have you known? A few months. And you still allowed my son to waste his time.
Mama, you've said enough.
The room became silent. His mother stared at him in disbelief. It was the first time in his life he had ever raised his voice at her. She slowly picked up her handbag.
I can see. You have chosen.
She walked towards the door. Just before leaving, she stopped.
I pray my son hasn't tied his future to the wrong woman.
Joan didn't cry, not immediately. Sometimes, the deepest pain leaves no tears, only silence. Within days, the whispers began. Women at church suddenly lowered their voices whenever Joan walked past. Neighbors stayed a little longer than usual. People who had never shown interest in their marriage suddenly had advice. One afternoon, Joan visited her friend Esther, hoping for a little comfort. She knocked. No answer. She knocked again. A child opened the curtain and looked outside.
Tell Auntie Esther that I'm here.
The little boy disappeared. A few moments later, he returned.
Mommy says she is sleeping.
As she turned to leave, she heard laughter from inside the house. She stopped walking. She knew that laugh. Esther wasn't sleeping. She simply didn't want to see her. A week later came Esther's baby's naming ceremony. Almost every woman Joan knew attended. She wasn't invited. That evening, Joan quietly folded the small baby gift she had bought weeks earlier, placed it back into the cupboard, closed the cupboard and whispered,
Maybe next time.
Lawrence stood at the bedroom door. He had seen everything. Without saying a word, he picked up the gift, placed it on the dining table, then sat beside her. Neither of them spoke. There are moments when words only make pain heavier. During the semester break, Joan's younger sister, Anna, came to stay with them. Anna was everything Joan wasn't. Bold, fearless, quick to notice injustice. She immediately sensed the heaviness in the house. One Saturday morning, Lawrence's mother arrived again, this time carrying oranges. The conversation started politely until she looked at Joan.
My daughter, I have been thinking, maybe all this sickness didn't just appear. Girls these days, who knows what they did before marriage? Careless living. These things have consequences.
Ada looked straight into the older woman's eyes without blinking.
What are you looking at?
I'm only saying what people are already saying.
I'll leave you two to talk.
She left. Joan turned towards her sister.
You shouldn't have done that.
I didn't insult her. I just wanted her to feel a pinch of what she is good at doing.
The following week, Lawrence returned home earlier than usual. As he approached the gate, he heard familiar voices. His mother was outside speaking with a neighbor. He stopped. Neither women noticed him.
I am afraid of that girl, my daughter-in-law.
Why? She talks to herself. I have seen her. Sometimes she is in the kitchen. Really? In front of the mirror. Talking. Who talks to themselves like that? That's strange. I'm beginning to wonder if that family is into something. The younger sister, have you noticed the way she looks at people? Those are not ordinary girls. I don't know the kind of family my son married into. Pray. Pray.
Lawrence felt his hand began to shake. Not from fear, from anger. Joan wasn't talking to spirits. She was talking to herself because she was trying to survive, trying to keep herself from falling apart. And the woman who should have protected her dignity had turned her pain into gossip. Lawrence stepped into the compound.
Mama, I think it's time you went back to the village.
What did you say?
You heard me. You've said enough. You've hurt enough. This house needs peace.
For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Finally, she picked up her bag, then quietly walked away. As the gate closed behind her, Lawrence returned towards the house. He saw Joan sitting on the living room floor, crying harder than she had ever before, because some words cannot be unheard. For the first time since their wedding, Joan packed a small bag, and Lawrence realized he wasn't only fighting to save their dream of becoming parents, he was fighting to save his marriage. Lawrence stood quietly at the bedroom door. Joan's small bag lay open on the bed.
I think I should go to my parents' house for a while. I don't want to be the reason you keep fighting your family. Maybe everyone is right. Maybe you deserve someone who can give you the family you've always wanted.
Lawrence slowly walked towards her. He gently closed the bag. Then he sat beside her. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Finally, he whispered,
Look at me. I'm sorry.
She remained silent. He took a deep breath.
I kept trying to protect you from everyone outside this house, and somewhere along the way, I became one of the people hurting you. I shouted at you. I carried my pain alone. I forgot that this was never your battle. It was ours. I can't promise you that life will suddenly become easy. I can't promise people will stop talking. I can't even promise that tomorrow will bring good news. But I can promise this, no matter what happens, you will never fight this battle alone.
Joan broke down. She rested her forehead against his, and for the first time in months, they cried together. Not because everything had been fixed, but because they had found each other again. Sometimes, healing begins long before the miracle arrives. It begins the moment two people choose each other again. A few weeks later, Joan underwent surgery. The hours felt endless. Lawrence sat outside the operating theater with his hands clasped together. He wasn't praying for a child anymore. He was praying for his wife. After what felt like forever, the doctor finally stepped outside.
Mr. Lawrence, the surgery was successful.
Lawrence closed his eyes. A quiet, "Thank you, Lord," escaped his lips. Recovery wasn't easy. There were painful days, discouraging days, days when Joan wondered if it had all been worth it. But this time, she never questioned alone. Lawrence attended every appointment, prepared every meal, reminded her to take every medication. and whenever fear returned, he would simply smile and say, "We are still in this together." Months passed. Slowly, life became peaceful again. Not perfect, just peaceful. Sometimes, peace is the greatest blessing of all. One quiet morning, Joan stood alone in the bathroom. She stared at the small test in trembling hands. She checked it once, twice, then the third time. She couldn't believe what she was seeing. Tears blurred her vision. At that very moment, Lawrence walked into the room. Joan! She couldn't speak. She simply held out the test. Lawrence looked at it, looked again, then looked back at her. Neither of them said a word. Words suddenly felt too small. He slowly pulled her into his arms and they stood there, holding each other, remembering every tear, every hospital visit, every cruel comment, every lonely night, every prayer whispered in silence. Months later, their home echoed with the sound they had dreamt about for years. The baby's cry. But something had changed. Whenever visitors admired the child, Lawrence would smile, then quietly look at Joan, because deep inside, he knew everything most people didn't. The greatest miracle God had given them wasn't the child sleeping in the next room. It was the marriage that survived long enough to welcome that child. Life has a way of tasting every marriage differently. For some couples, the challenge is money. For others, it's sickness, misunderstanding, loss, or infertility. The challenge itself isn't always what destroys a marriage. Sometimes, it's allowing that challenge to convince two people that they are enemies. Joan and Lawrence discovered that the problem was never sitting between them. The problem was standing in front of them. The day they stopped pointing fingers at each other and started standing side by side was the day they truly began to heal. Because marriage was never meant to be husband versus wife. It was always meant to be husband and wife versus the problem. Before you judge a couple because they don't have children, remember, you don't know the prayers they have prayed. You don't know the tears they have hidden. You don't know the battles they have chosen to fight in silence. Be kind. Some people are carrying burdens they never asked for. And if you're married, protect your relationship. Don't let the opinions of outsiders become louder than the promises you made to each other. The strongest marriages are not the ones without problems. They are the ones where two imperfect people keep choosing each other even in the middle of the storm. If you enjoy meaningful stories that inspire, challenge, and remind us that every trial carries a lesson, subscribe and join our growing family. Until our next story, take care of those you love, keep choosing kindness, and as always, let's triumph together.